Nicole was humiliated by her husband in front of the city's entire financial elite. He said, loud and clear, that he'd rather kiss a dog than kiss her. Everyone laughed, everyone looked at her with pity, but no one expected what she would do in the next 10 minutes. While Richard smiled victoriously, Nicole revealed every lie, every deception, every betrayal. In a matter of minutes, his career, reputation, and freedom crumbled before the very eyes that witnessed her humiliation. This is the story of how she turned the worst night of her life into the best revenge anyone could devise. There's a pain that gnaws at you from within. It's the pain of realizing that the person you've built a lifetime with sees you as nothing. Nicole knew this pain well. For years, she swallowed the nasty comments, ignored the signs of disrespect, and believed the love she felt would be enough for both of them. But that night, in a ballroom filled with powerful people, expensive gowns, and French champagne, Nicole discovered there's a limit to how much a woman can endure. And when that limit is crossed in front of witnesses, when the humiliation is public and cruel, something inside her breaks, or awakens. What Nicole did that night wasn't an act of desperation. It was an act of calculated justice, and it all started with a simple question she asked her husband. Before we continue, we want to hear from you. What city and country are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. We love hearing where our viewers are coming from. Nicole stood in front of the bedroom mirror. She ran her fingers over the navy blue dress she'd chosen so carefully 3 weeks earlier. It was elegant, understated, yet beautiful. She wanted to look beautiful tonight. She wanted Richard to look at her and remember the woman he'd fallen in love with 15 years ago. Things weren't right between them. Nicole knew it. In recent months, Richard had been coming home late. He barely spoke to her at dinner. When she tried to broach the subject, he'd deflect, saying he was tired, that work was heavy. Nicole believed him, or pretended to believe him, because it was easier to believe than to face the truth. She put on the pearl earring, the same one Richard had given her for their 10th wedding anniversary. Nicole remembered that day. They had dinner at a small, cozy Italian restaurant. Richard had held her hand across the table and told her she was the best thing that had ever happened to him. Nicole believed those words. She always had. But lately, Nicole felt like she was losing her husband. He didn't touch her anymore. He didn't laugh at her jokes. He didn't ask about her day. It was as if she'd become invisible in her own home, and it hurt in a way she couldn't explain. Today's party was important. Richard works at an investment firm, one of the largest in the city. He's always been ambitious. He's always wanted to be at the top. And Nicole has always supported him. She put her own career aside to take care of the house, to be present, to be the perfect wife he needed by his side. She did all this for love, because she believed that marriage was about partnership, about being together through both triumphs and defeats. Nicole looked at her reflection in the mirror. She was still beautiful. At 39, she took care of her health, exercised, and kept her hair neat. But when Richard looked at her, Nicole felt he saw nothing anymore. No beauty, no worth, nothing. She took a deep breath. Today would be different. Today, at the party, she would approach him. She would talk, she would smile, she would remind him why they got married. Nicole wanted to save the marriage. She wanted to believe there was still time. Richard entered the room. He was dressed in a black tuxedo, impeccably groomed. His hair was slicked back, and he smelled of the expensive perfume he only wore on special occasions. He glanced at Nicole quickly, saying nothing about her dress or how beautiful she looked. He simply grabbed his wallet from the bedside table and said, "Are you ready? We can't be late." Nicole felt a pang in her chest, but smiled. "I'm ready." They got out and got in the car. The drive to the hotel where the party would be held was silent. Richard was typing on his phone, responding to work messages, or so Nicole imagined. She looked out the window and tried not to think about how much the silence hurt. When they arrived at the hotel, Nicole saw the ballroom decorated with crystal chandeliers, white flowers, and elegant tables. There were executives, shareholders, and investors. Everyone dressed in expensive clothes, everyone smiling, everyone networking. Nicole knew that world. She had been to many parties like that with Richard, and she always felt a little out of place, as if she didn't truly belong. Richard got out of the car and handed the keys to the valet. Nicole got out too and waited for him to offer his arm so they could go in together. But he didn't. He just started walking ahead of her, waving to colleagues, greeting important people. Nicole followed behind, trying not to appear invisible. Inside the room, the music was soft. A small orchestra was playing jazz. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne and canapes. Nicole grabbed a glass and tried to relax. She saw Richard across the room, chatting animatedly with a group of executives. He was laughing, gesturing, and seemed happy. Nicole couldn't remember the last time she'd seen her husband laugh like that with her. She decided it was time. It was time to try. Nicole walked up to Richard, took a deep breath, and gently touched his arm. He turned, surprised. Nicole smiled and said softly, "Will you dance with me?" Richard looked at her. For a brief second, Nicole saw something in his gaze. It wasn't affection. It was discomfort, as if she'd interrupted something important. But Nicole didn't give up. She kept smiling, hoping he'd say yes, that he'd take her hand and lead her to the dance floor, like he used to. But what happened next changed everything. Have you ever tried to save something you loved, but realized it might already be too late? Think about that for a moment. And if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any more heartwarming stories like this. Richard looked at Nicole as if she'd just asked something absurd. He didn't respond immediately. He just glanced at the executives around him, as if measuring what he was going to say. Nicole still held his arm lightly, waiting. She just wanted a dance. She just wanted a few minutes of her husband's attention. Dance? Richard repeated the word as if it were something strange. He gave a short, dry laugh. The executives around him laughed too, as if Nicole had told a bad joke. Nicole felt her face heat up, but she tried to remain calm. Yes, just a dance. The orchestra is playing that song you like. Richard jerked his arm away from her. He glanced around, making sure everyone was paying attention. Then he said loudly, clearly enough for everyone around to hear, "I'd rather kiss a dog than you." The silence that followed was brutal. Some executives laughed nervously. Others looked away, embarrassed, but most remained silent, waiting to see what Nicole would do. Waiting to see if she would cry, scream, or simply disappear. Nicole felt as if the ground had dropped out from under her feet. Her heart pounded so hard she thought everyone could hear it. Her hands trembled. Her champagne glass nearly fell over. She looked at Richard, searching for any sign of regret, any sign that he hadn't meant what he said. But what she saw was worse. She saw pleasure. Richard was pleased. He had enjoyed humiliating her. For a moment, Nicole considered running away. She considered going to the bathroom, locking the door, and crying her eyes out. She considered calling a taxi and leaving that party, that life, that marriage that had clearly ended long ago. But then, something inside her shifted. It wasn't anger. It wasn't despair. It was clarity. Nicole realized that this moment wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The beginning of something she'd been planning, unknowingly, for months. Because Nicole wasn't the naive woman Richard thought she was. She hadn't spent the last few months just hoping the marriage would improve. She had investigated. She had discovered things Richard thought had been hidden forever. Nicole took a step back, set her champagne glass down on a nearby table, and took a deep breath. She looked at Richard, at the executives around her, at the people who had witnessed her humiliation, and then she smiled. It wasn't a smile of sadness. It was the smile of someone who knows something no one else does. "It's okay, Richard," Nicole said calmly. "I understand." Richard frowned, confused. He expected tears. He expected a scene, but Nicole was calm. Too calm. Nicole turned and walked across the room. She wasn't running away. She was taking a stand. Because what she was going to do in the next few minutes needed an audience. And this party had the perfect audience. She walked to the center of the room near the small orchestra. People were talking, laughing, drinking. No one was paying her any attention. But that was about to change. Nicole grabbed her cell phone from the small bag she was carrying. She had everything there. All the evidence, all the documents, all the recordings. She had spent months collecting every piece of evidence. And now, finally, she was going to use it. She looked around and saw Daniel, Richard's boss. He was chatting with other company directors near the bar. Nicole also spotted Stephanie, the married shareholder with whom Richard had been having an affair. Stephanie was across the room, next to her own husband, pretending to be the perfect wife. Nicole took a deep breath. She knew there was no turning back from what she was about to do. She knew she would destroy lives, but she also knew those lives deserved to be destroyed, because lies, betrayals, and humiliations come at a price. And today, Richard would pay that price. Nicole raised her hand and waved to one of the party organizers, who was directing the waiters near the orchestra stage. She asked to speak into the microphone. The organizer hesitated, but Nicole insisted. "It's important, very important." The organizer, not understanding what was happening, agreed. He signaled for the orchestra to stop playing. The music stopped. The conversation subsided. People began to look toward the center of the hall, where Nicole stood, holding a microphone. Richard, across the room, frowned. He had no idea what was about to happen. Nicole looked at him. And then she began to speak. Nicole held the microphone tightly. The room was silent. All conversations stopped. All eyes were on her. She could feel the weight of the moment. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest. But she wasn't nervous. She was ready. "Good evening, everyone," Nicole began, her voice calm and clear. "I know I wasn't expected to speak here today, but I need to share something important with you. Something that involves people in this room, people you trust, people you admire." Richard, across the room, stepped forward. He was confused, but also concerned. Nicole saw his expression change. He began to understand something was wrong. Nicole continued, "My name is Nicole, and I'm the wife of Richard, one of the executives at this company. Many of you know him. He's charismatic, intelligent, ambitious. But today, he humiliated me in front of all of you. He said he'd rather kiss a dog than kiss me." Some people looked away, embarrassed. Others looked at Richard, waiting for a reaction. But Richard remained standing, unsure of what to do. "I could have left here crying," Nicole said. "I could have gone home and pretended nothing happened. I could have continued being the silent, obedient wife he always wanted me to be. But I won't do that, because today's humiliation was just the last straw. It was the latest of many disrespects I've tolerated over the years." Nicole paused. She looked around the room. Everyone was attentive. No one moved. "Over the past few months, I started noticing strange things," Nicole continued. "Richard would come home late. He smelled of perfume that wasn't his. He'd hide his phone whenever I walked into the room. At first, I ignored him. I trusted him. I believed him when he said he was busy with work." Nicole remembered all those nights she'd stayed up, waiting for Richard to arrive. She remembered all the times he'd made lame excuses. She remembered how stupid she'd felt for believing him. "But then I started paying more attention," Nicole said. "I began to realize that his work wasn't the only thing keeping him busy. There were messages on his phone that he quickly deleted. There were calls he took in another room. There were business trips that lasted longer than necessary." Nicole saw Richard clench his fists. He was getting tense. She knew he wanted to interrupt her, but he couldn't. Not in front of everyone. "I could have confronted him," Nicole continued. "I could have asked him directly if he was cheating on me, but I knew he would deny it. I knew he would turn the tables and make me feel guilty for suspecting. So I did something different. I investigated." Nicole smiled slightly. She saw the panic rise on Richard's face. "I hired a private investigator," Nicole revealed. And over the past 3 months, he's been gathering information about Richard. Information I never imagined I'd uncover. Information that goes beyond the betrayal." The room was completely silent. people were barely breathing. Everyone wanted to know what Nicole would say next. I discovered that Richard wasn't just cheating on me, Nicole said, looking directly at her husband. He was cheating on this company too. A murmur ran through the room. Daniel, Richard's boss, stepped forward, his face serious. Nicole continued, I discovered that Richard had been embezzling money from clients. I discovered that he was falsifying documents. I discovered that he was manipulating transactions for his own benefit. And I discovered that he wasn't doing it alone. Nicole turned to Stephanie, the married shareholder. Stephanie paled. Her husband, standing next to her, frowned in confusion. Richard had an accomplice, Nicole said, someone who helped him hide his crimes, someone who benefited financially from these schemes, and that person is here, in this room, right now. Nicole paused dramatically. She wanted everyone to feel the gravity of what she was about to reveal. For months, I've been gathering evidence, Nicole said. I have recordings, I have documents, I have bank transactions, I have everything. And today, here in front of all of you, I'm going to expose it all. Richard stepped forward. Nicole, stop it. You're drunk. You don't know what you're saying. Nicole laughed. It wasn't a laugh of amusement. It was a laugh of someone who finally had control. I'm not drunk, Richard, Nicole said calmly. I'm lucid. More lucid than I've been in 15 years. And what I'm going to do now is something I should have done a long time ago. Nicole looked at the phone in her hand. She had it all there, all the evidence. And now, she was going to share it with the world. Nicole took a deep breath. She knew there was no turning back from what she was about to do now. But she was ready. She was ready to destroy the man who had humiliated her. She was ready to reveal the truth he had tried to hide for so long. Let me tell you how it all started, Nicole said into the microphone. 6 months ago, I woke up in the middle of the night and realized Richard wasn't in bed. I went downstairs and found him in his office, talking on the phone. He was speaking softly, but I could hear a few words. He said things like, transfer the money before anyone notices, and change the documents by Friday. Nicole saw Richard tense up even more. He looked around, searching for a way out. But there was no way out. He was trapped in that moment, just as Nicole had been trapped in their marriage for years. At first, I thought I was imagining things, Nicole continued. I thought maybe it was just a normal business conversation. But something inside me told me it wasn't. Then the next day, when Richard left for work, I walked into his office. I opened his laptop, and what I found changed everything. Nicole paused. She wanted everyone to feel the weight of that moment. I found spreadsheets, Nicole said. Spreadsheets with transactions that didn't add up. I found emails with instructions to falsify financial reports. I found conversations with clients where Richard lied about their investments. He promised returns that never existed. He diverted their money to offshore accounts. And he covered it all up with false documents. Daniel, Richard's boss, was now completely focused. He didn't take his eyes off Nicole. Other executives were also paying attention. Some pulled out their phones, probably already thinking about the legal consequences of what they were hearing. I took pictures of everything, Nicole said. I saved every document, every email, every conversation. I knew that if I confronted Richard directly, he would delete everything. He would deny it. He would convince me I was crazy. So I was smart. I waited. I investigated further, and the more I discovered, the worse it got. Nicole looked at Stephanie. The married shareholder was now visibly nervous. Her husband, standing next to her, was beginning to realize something was very wrong. But financial fraud wasn't the only thing Richard was hiding, Nicole continued. He was also hiding a mistress, someone who worked with him, someone who had access to the same systems as him, someone who helped him cover up his crimes. Stephanie took a step back, as if to disappear. But it was too late. For months, I followed them, Nicole said. I saw them meeting in hotels. I saw them dining at expensive restaurants, paid for with money embezzled from clients. I saw them laughing, kissing, planning the future they would build together with the stolen money. Stephanie's husband turned to her, his face red with anger. "What is she talking about, Stephanie?" Stephanie didn't answer. She just stared at the floor, unable to look at her husband. Nicole continued, "I didn't do anything immediately. I waited, because I knew that if I revealed everything too soon, they would find a way to get out. They would hire expensive lawyers. They would bribe people. They would destroy the evidence. So I waited for the right moment, and that moment is now." Nicole looked around the room. She saw fear, shock, anger. Some people looked at Richard with contempt. Others looked at Stephanie. No one knew what to say. "Today, when Richard humiliated me in front of all of you, he thought he was in control," Nicole said. "He thought he could treat me like dirt and get away with it. But he was wrong, because I'm not the weak woman he thought I was. I'm the woman who spent months collecting evidence against him. I'm the woman who will destroy his life, just as he tried to destroy mine." Richard finally found his voice. "That's a lie. She's making all this up because she's jealous." Nicole smiled. "Jealous? Of you, Richard? No, I'm not jealous. I have proof." Nicole held up her phone. "I have recordings of conversations between you and Stephanie. Conversations where you plan to embezzle more money. Conversations where you laugh at me. Conversations where you say that once you've saved enough money, you'll run away together and leave me with nothing." The silence in the hall was absolute. No one moved. No one breathed. "And that's not all," Nicole continued. "I also have copies of all the fraudulent transactions. I have the forged documents. I have everything. And today, here, I'm going to share it all with the right people." Nicole looked at Daniel. "Your employee is a criminal, and he has tarnished this company's reputation." She looked at the investors present. "Your money was stolen, and you deserve to know the truth." And then Nicole prepared to do what she had planned for so long. Nicole looked around the room again. She wanted to make sure everyone was paying attention. And they were. There wasn't a single person at the party who wasn't completely focused on her at that moment. "I know many of you are probably thinking I'm overreacting," Nicole said, "that maybe I'm being dramatic, that maybe I should have handled this at home, away from everyone's eyes. But let me explain why I chose to do this here, today, in front of all of you." Nicole paused. She wanted her words to have impact. "I chose to do this here because the humiliation Richard caused me was public," Nicole continued. "He didn't care enough to respect me when there were witnesses, so I decided that the truth about him would also be revealed publicly. And most importantly, I needed the right people to be present when I revealed everything." Nicole pointed to Daniel, Richard's boss. "You, Daniel, need to know that the man you trusted for years stole from this company. He tarnished the reputation you built, and he did it behind your back." Daniel said nothing, but his expression was one of suppressed anger. He looked at Richard as if he were seeing a stranger. Nicole then pointed to a group of well-dressed men and women near the bar. "And you investors need to know that the money you entrusted to this company was misappropriated. Richard and Stephanie created fake accounts. They transferred funds offshore. And they covered it all with fraudulent reports that you signed without knowing they were lies." Investors began whispering among themselves. Some pulled out their cell phones, likely already calling their lawyers. Nicole continued, "And there's more. There are authorities here today, people who work in financial regulation, people who can act immediately on what I'm revealing." Nicole glanced at a man in a gray suit standing near the entrance to the room. She knew who he was. He was a federal auditor invited by one of the shareholders to the party. He was already paying attention. He was already taking mental notes on everything Nicole said. "I didn't come here just to humiliate Richard," Nicole said. "I came here to make sure he pays for his crimes, and to do that, I needed witnesses. I needed important people, people who could take action, and now, all those people are here." Richard tried to get closer. "Nicole, stop this right now. You're making a mistake." Nicole turned to him. "The only mistake I made, Richard, was believing in you for 15 years. It was putting my career aside to support yours. It was ignoring all the signs that you no longer loved me. But that mistake ends today." Richard looked around for support, but no one was on his side. Everyone looked at him with suspicion, disgust, anger. Nicole spoke into the microphone again. Before I show the specific evidence, I want everyone to understand one thing. I didn't do this for revenge, I did it for justice. Because when someone steals, lies, and cheats, they have to face the consequences. And Richard will. Nicole grabbed her phone and connected it to a large screen in the room, used for corporate presentations. The party planner tried to stop her, but Daniel motioned for Nicole to continue. He wanted to see the evidence. The screen lit up, and the first image that appeared was a financial spreadsheet. Numbers, dates, transactions, everything documented. This is one of the spreadsheets I found on Richard's laptop, Nicole explained. As you can see, there are transactions here that don't match the company's official reports. Money that came in but wasn't recorded. Money that went out without authorization. People in the room leaned closer to the screen for a better look. Some investors recognized their own names in the transactions. Nicole moved on to the next image. It was an email from Richard to Stephanie. In this email, Nicole said, Richard instructs Stephanie to change the numbers on a report before sending it to the auditors. He clearly says, change the amounts in account 40C72. We can't let anyone see how much we actually embezzled this month. The room was in absolute shock. There was no denying it. The evidence was there, on the screen, for all to see. Nicole moved on to another image. This time, it was a photo of Richard and Stephanie together in a hotel. They were kissing. The date stamp was in the corner, 3 weeks ago. Stephanie's husband stepped forward, his fists clenched. Did you cheat on me, Stephanie? With him? Stephanie began to cry, but they weren't tears of regret. They were tears of despair. She knew her life was falling apart. Nicole didn't stop. She had more, much more, and she was going to show it all. Nicole moved on to the next image on the screen. It was a bank document, a document showing transfers to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The name on the account belonged to a shell company, but Nicole had tracked it. She knew exactly where the money was going. This account, Nicole explained, pointing to the screen, was opened 2 years ago by Richard. He used the name of a company that doesn't exist, a company created solely to hide stolen money. And over the course of those 2 years, over $3 million were transferred into that account. The number echoed through the room. $3 million. It was a lot of money. Money that belonged to the firm's clients. Money Richard had stolen. Daniel was now visibly furious. He stepped forward and glared at Richard. $3 million. You embezzled $3 million. Richard tried to respond, but the words wouldn't come. He was cornered. There was no excuse that could justify this. Nicole continued. And that wasn't all. Richard didn't work alone. As I said before, he had help. Stephanie had access to the company's financial systems. She was responsible for reviewing transactions before submitting reports to auditors. And she altered the numbers. She hid the fraud. She covered her tracks. Nicole moved on to another image. This time, it was a series of emails exchanged between Richard and Stephanie. In the emails, they discussed how to hide transactions, how to create false reports, how to fool auditors. Read it for yourselves, Nicole said, pointing to the screen. Here, Richard says, we need to be more careful. The auditors are asking questions. And Stephanie says, don't worry. I've already created an alternative report. They'll never find out. The investors were shocked. Some were already on the phones, calling lawyers. Others just stared at the screen, trying to process what they were seeing. Nicole moved on to the next test. It was a tax document. A document that showed how Richard falsely declared income to pay less in taxes. He inflated expenses that never existed. He created fake invoices. He lied to the federal government. A tax fraud, Nicole said clearly. Richard didn't just steal from his clients. He also stole from the government. He evaded taxes for years, and he did it knowingly. He knew exactly what he was doing. The federal auditor near the entrance was already taking notes. He didn't say anything, but Nicole knew he was already preparing a report. Richard wasn't going to get away with this. Nicole looked at Richard. He was pale, sweating. He seemed smaller now, less confident, less powerful. He was falling apart in front of everyone. "You must be wondering how I got all this," Nicole said, looking directly at Richard. "How a simple housewife managed to gather all this evidence. Well, let me tell you." Nicole paused dramatically. "I'm not just a housewife, Richard," Nicole said. "Before I married you, I worked in financial auditing. I was good at it. I knew how to track money. I knew how to spot fraud. But you never paid attention to that, did you? You always saw me as inferior, as someone who should just stay home and take care of you." Nicole smiled bitterly. "But I never forgot my skills, and when I began to distrust you, I used everything I knew. I tracked your transactions. I followed the money. I found the offshore accounts. I found the fake documents. And I did it all alone, while you thought I knew nothing." Richard tried to speak. "Sorry, Nicole, I can explain." "No," Nicole interrupted. "You can't explain. There's no explanation for what you did. There's no excuse. You stole, you lied, you cheated, and now you're going to pay." Nicole moved on to another image. It was a transcribed audio recording. A conversation between Richard and Stephanie where they discussed how much money they still needed to embezzle before running away together. In this recording," Nicole explained, "Richard says, 6 more months and we'll have enough money to disappear. We can go to Europe, start a new life." And Stephanie says, "What about Nicole? What are you going to do with her?" Richard laughs and says, "Nicole is no problem. She's going to stay here, alone and with nothing." Nicole's voice shook slightly as she read that part, not with sadness, but with anger. Anger at having been treated like nothing. Anger at having trusted someone who planned to abandon her. "But you didn't count on one thing," Nicole said, looking at Richard and Stephanie. "You didn't count on me finding out, on gathering evidence, on waiting for the right moment to destroy you." Nicole took a deep breath. "And that moment is now." Nicole moved on to the next set of images. This time, they were photos. Lots of photos. Photos of Richard and Stephanie in different places, in restaurants, in hotels, in cars. All the photos were dated and time-stamped. All of them were irrefutable proof of the betrayal. "For the past 3 months," Nicole said, "I hired a private investigator to follow Richard, and what he discovered was devastating. Richard wasn't just having an affair with Stephanie. He was building a parallel life with her." Nicole pointed to one of the photos on the screen. This photo was taken at a French restaurant downtown, 4 weeks ago. Richard said he was in a business meeting that night, but, as you can see, the only meeting he had was with Stephanie. Stephanie's husband was now shaking with rage. He looked at his wife with a mixture of pain and hatred. "You lied to me." "For how long?" Stephanie couldn't answer. She just cried, her hands covering her face. Nicole continued mercilessly, "And this other photo was taken in a hotel, an expensive hotel. Richard booked the room using the company credit card. In other words, he used stolen money to pay for his meetings with his mistress." Some executives in the room shook their heads in disgust. Richard's audacity was impressive. He didn't just steal. He used the stolen money to finance his betrayal. Nicole moved on to another image. It was a text message between Richard and Stephanie, a message Nicole had managed to retrieve from his phone. And in this message, Nicole read aloud. Richard writes, "I can't wait to be rid of her. Nicole is a dead weight in my life, but soon we'll be free." And Stephanie replies, "I can't stand pretending anymore either. My marriage is a sham. But at least soon we'll have everything we want." Nicole's voice didn't waver. She read those words as if they were mere facts. But inside, every word hurt. It hurt to know that the man she'd spent 15 years with saw her as dead weight. It hurt to know that he planned to discard her like trash. But Nicole didn't let the pain show. She stayed strong. "And there's more," Nicole said. "Because the betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was also financial. Richard and Stephanie planned to run away together with the stolen money. They were going to leave their lives behind, leave their spouses behind, and start over in another country where no one could find them. Nicole flipped to a document showing the plane tickets she'd purchased. Tickets to Switzerland. 2 tickets, one way only, with a flight scheduled for 2 months from now. Here's the proof, Nicole said. Richard bought those tickets 3 weeks ago. He and Stephanie planned to disappear in December. They were going to leave us all behind and live happily on the money they stole. The room was completely silent. No one knew what to say. The level of betrayal, dishonesty, and cruelty was difficult to process. Nicole looked at Stephanie's husband. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but you deserve to know the truth, just like I did. The man just nodded, unable to speak. He looked at Stephanie one last time and then turned his back on her. He didn't want to look at the woman who betrayed him anymore. Nicole then moved on to the final set of evidence regarding the betrayal. They were audio recordings she had secretly made over the past few months. These recordings, Nicole explained, were made at different times, some in Richard's car, others in his home office. I installed recording devices without his knowledge, and what I captured is shocking. Nicole played the first recording. Richard's voice echoed through the room. Stephanie, I love you. You are my everything. Nicole was never your match. She's boring, dull, lifeless. I can't wait to get rid of her and finally have the life I deserve with you. The room was so quiet you could hear people breathing. Richard's voice on the recordings was clear. There was no denying it. There was no way to tell it was a lie. Nicole played another recording. This time, it was Stephanie speaking. My husband is an idiot. He doesn't notice anything. He thinks I'm working late, but I'm actually with you. And when we take the money and leave, he'll be here, not understanding what happened. It'll be perfect. Stephanie's husband closed his eyes as if he didn't want to hear any more. But he stayed. He needed to know the whole truth. Nicole turned off the recordings. She looked around the room. Everyone was shocked. Everyone was processing what they had just heard. These are the people you trusted, Nicole said calmly. These are the people you admired. But now, you know who they really are. Nicole paused. She took a deep breath. And now, I'm going to show you what happens next. Think for a moment. Have you ever trusted someone who betrayed you? Have you ever felt like you gave everything and received nothing in return? Tell us in the comments what you would do if you were in Nicole's shoes. How would you react? Nicole looked around the room one last time. She had everyone's attention, investors, executives, officials. Everyone was waiting to see what she would do next, and Nicole wasn't going to disappoint. Now I'm going to show you the final evidence, Nicole said. The evidence that will ensure Richard and Stephanie face the consequences of their crimes. Nicole moved on to a new set of documents on the screen. They were contracts, fake contracts Richard had created to deceive investors, contracts that promised impossible returns, contracts that were never honored. These contracts, Nicole explained, were signed by clients who trusted Richard. They invested millions of dollars based on his promises, but the money was never actually invested. It was embezzled, it was stolen, and these clients never saw a penny back. One of the investors in the room stepped forward. He was an older man with gray hair. He looked furious. I signed one of those contracts. Richard assured me my money was safe. He assured me I'd get a return in 6 months, but I never saw anything. Nicole nodded. I know, and you weren't the only one. There are at least 15 investors who were deceived in the same way, and the total amount of money stolen exceeds $5 million. The number dropped like a bomb in the room. $5 million. It was even worse than anyone had imagined. Daniel, Richard's boss, was now red-faced with anger. Richard, is this true? You stole $5 million? Richard tried to answer, but his voice was weak. I can explain. This isn't what it seems. Then explain, Daniel shouted. Explain how you stole from our customers. Explain how you tarnished this company's reputation. Richard had no answer. He just stood there, like a cornered animal. Nicole continued. And there's more, because Richard didn't just steal from clients. He also stole from the company itself. He created false expenses. He forged receipts. He embezzled internal funds, and all of this with Stephanie's help. Nicole moved on to another image. It was an internal company report. A report that showed expenses that never occurred, trips that were never taken, equipment that was never purchased. Richard submitted these expenses for reimbursement, Nicole explained, and the company paid for things that never happened. And for years, no one noticed, no one questioned it, because everyone trusted Richard. Daniel was now shaking with rage. How many years? How many years have you been doing this? Nicole answered for Richard. 5 years. For 5 years, Richard stole from the company. And the total embezzled is close to $2 million. The hall erupted in murmurs. People couldn't believe it. The scale of the fraud was staggering. Nicole then turned to the federal auditor standing near the entrance. You're probably wondering if I have proof of all this. And the answer is yes. I have copies of all the documents, I have all the transactions, I have everything, and I'm ready to hand it all over to the authorities. The auditor approached. Do you have this evidence with you now? Nicole nodded. I do, and I can send it all to you right away. The auditor took a business card from his pocket and handed it to Nicole. Please send everything to this email. We will open a formal investigation. Nicole took the card and smiled. You're welcome. I'll send it today. Richard tried to approach the auditor. Wait, this is a misunderstanding. She's distorting the facts. I didn't do anything wrong. The auditor looked at Richard disdainfully. Sir, I suggest you hire a lawyer, because based on what I've seen here today, you're going to need one. Richard turned pale. He finally understood. He finally realized there was no way out, that Nicole had completely destroyed him. Stephanie tried to approach Richard, but her husband grabbed her arm. You're not going anywhere. We're going to have a long talk. And then I'm going to talk to my lawyer about the divorce. Stephanie cried louder, but no one pitied her. She had made her choices, and now she was going to pay for them. Nicole spoke into the microphone again. I wanted you all to know the truth. I wanted you to see who Richard really is. Not the charismatic, successful man he pretends to be, but the criminal, the liar, the traitor he's always been. Nicole looked directly at Richard. You humiliated me today. You said you'd rather kiss a dog than me. You thought I'd just take it in stride, that I'd just leave here crying and continue being the submissive wife you always wanted, but you were wrong. Nicole's voice was steady, strong. She was no longer hurt. She was empowered. I used the humiliation you caused me as fuel, Nicole continued. I used it to remind myself why I did all of this, why I spent months investigating you, why I gathered all this evidence. Because you deserve to pay for what you did. Richard tried to speak one last time. Nicole, please, we can talk about this. No, Nicole interrupted. There's nothing more to talk about. I've already spoken to a lawyer. I've already filed for divorce, and I'm going to make sure you get nothing, because everything you have was built on lies, theft, and betrayal. Nicole turned off the microphone. She had said everything she needed to say. She had shown everything she needed to show. And now, the rest was out of her control. Daniel approached Richard. You're fired, effective immediately, and I'll make sure you never work in finance again. Investors began approaching Richard, demanding answers, demanding their money back. But Richard had no answers. He just stood there, broken, defeated. The federal auditor began making calls. He was summoning colleagues. The investigation was already underway. Stephanie tried to leave the room, but her husband wouldn't let her. He held her tightly. You're going to face this. You're not going to run away. And Nicole? Nicole just watched the chaos she had created, watched Richard's life crumble, watched everything he had built being destroyed in a matter of minutes. 10 minutes. That was all Nicole needed. 10 minutes to destroy the man who humiliated her. 10 minutes to seek justice. 10 minutes to prove she wasn't the weak woman Richard thought she was. Nicole grabbed her bag and started walking toward the salon exit. But before she left, she looked at Richard one last time. Nicole stopped at the salon door and looked back. The chaos was just beginning. Richard was surrounded by furious investors. They were all shouting at once. They were all demanding explanations. They all wanted to know what was going to happen to their money. "You told me my investment was safe," a man shouted, pushing Richard. "You promised me a return in 6 months. Where is my money?" Richard tried to pull away, but there were too many people around him. He was trapped. There was nowhere to run. Daniel was across the room, on the phone. He was speaking rapidly, probably to the company's legal department. His expression was one of someone who knew disaster was about to happen. The company's reputation was at stake. And all because of Richard. Stephanie was in a similar situation. Her husband held her arm, preventing her from leaving. He yelled at her, demanding answers. How many times have you cheated on me?" Stephanie cried uncontrollably. But the tears had no effect. Her husband was beyond compassion. He was betrayed, humiliated, and furious. "How long did you plan to run away with him?" the husband continued. "How long did you lie to me? While I was working to support our family, you were stealing and planning to abandon me." Stephanie tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. She had no excuses, no justifications. She had been caught, and now she faced the consequences. Other company shareholders began approaching Stephanie. They wanted answers too. They wanted to know how she had allowed the fraud to occur. They wanted to know why she hadn't warned anyone. "You were responsible for reviewing the transactions," a woman shouted. "You were supposed to protect the company's interests, but you were stealing along with him." Stephanie just shook her head, unable to answer. Meanwhile, the federal auditor was already coordinating with other colleagues. He was on the phone, asking them to send more people to the party. He wanted to ensure that no evidence was destroyed, that no one escaped. 2 hotel security guards approached Richard. They had been ordered by Daniel not to let Richard leave the room until the authorities arrived. Richard tried to argue, but the guards were firm. He would stay there until everything was resolved. Richard looked around desperately. He searched for allies, for someone who could help him. But there was no one. Everyone who had once admired him now looked down on him. Everyone who had once respected him now wanted to see him pay for his crimes. Nicole watched from the doorway. She could have walked away. I could have left the chaos behind. But she wanted to see. She wanted to witness the moment Richard lost everything, just as he had witnessed her humiliation. One of the investors approached Daniel. "What is the company going to do about this? How are we going to get our money back?" Daniel took a deep breath. "We will cooperate fully with the authorities. We will open an internal investigation, and we will do everything in our power to recover the misappropriated funds. But I can't promise anything right now." The investor was not satisfied with the answer. "That's not good enough. We want our money back. Now." Daniel had no more answers. He simply nodded, acknowledging the investor's frustration. Meanwhile, Stephanie's husband finally released her. He took a step back, looking at her as if she were a stranger. "I don't know you anymore. The woman I married would never have done this. You've become someone I don't recognize." Stephanie reached out, trying to touch him. "Please let me explain." But he walked away. "There's nothing to explain. You made your choices, and now you're going to live with the consequences." He turned and started walking toward the exit. He didn't look back. He wanted nothing more to do with Stephanie. Stephanie fell to her knees on the floor, crying. But no one came to comfort her. No one felt sorry for her. She had betrayed her husband, stolen from the company, and planned to flee with the stolen money. She deserved no pity. Richard was also beginning to realize the magnitude of what he had lost. He had lost his job. He had lost his reputation. He had lost his freedom. In a matter of minutes, his entire life had crumbled. And all because of Nicole, the woman he had underestimated, the woman he had humiliated, the woman he thought would never have the courage to stand up to him. Richard looked at the door and saw Nicole still there, watching. He walked toward her, trying to get closer, but the security guards held him back. "Nicole!" Richard shouted. "Please, we can work this out. It doesn't have to be this way." Nicole looked at him. There was no anger in her eyes. There was no sadness. There was only indifference. She no longer felt anything for Richard. He was a stranger now, a criminal who would face justice. "There's nothing left to resolve, Richard," Nicole said calmly. You made your choices, and now you're going to pay for them. Nicole turned and walked toward the exit. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. She had done what she needed to do, and now it was time to move on. Nicole left the ballroom and walked down the hotel corridor. Her steps were firm, sure. She was no longer shaking, no longer afraid. She had done what she needed to do, and now, finally, she was free. As she walked, Nicole thought about everything that had happened in the past few months. She thought about all the nights she'd spent awake, investigating Richard. She thought about all the times she'd wanted to give up, but kept going. She thought about all the suffering she'd endured to get to this point, and it was worth it. Every tear, every doubt, every moment of pain had been worth it. Because now, Nicole was free. Free from the toxic marriage. Free from the lies. Free from Richard. She reached the hotel entrance and breathed in the fresh night air. The sky was starry. The city was alive. And Nicole felt, for the first time in years, that she was alive too. She picked up her cell phone and called Linda, her lawyer. Linda answered on the first ring. Nicole? How was it? Nicole smiled. It was perfect. I showed all the evidence. The authorities are already involved. Richard is finished. Linda breathed a sigh of relief. You were amazing. I knew you could do it. Thank you for supporting me through all of this, Nicole said. I don't know if I could have done it without you. You're stronger than you think, Linda replied. And now, it's time to think about your future, about your divorce, about your new life. Nicole nodded. Yes, it's time to start over. They said goodbye, and Nicole put away her phone. She looked around. She saw the cars passing by. She saw the people walking on the sidewalks. She saw life happening around her. And for the first time, she felt like she was part of that life, that she wasn't just a spectator. Nicole thought about what had happened inside, in the ballroom. She thought about Richard, surrounded by furious investors. She thought about Stephanie, kneeling on the floor, crying. She thought about Daniel, dealing with the disaster Richard had created. And she didn't feel pity. She didn't feel remorse. She felt justice. Because sometimes, justice doesn't come from the courts. It doesn't come from the authorities. It comes from ordinary people who decide to stop accepting abuse, who decide to fight, who decide they deserve better. Nicole walked to the parking lot and got into her car. She hadn't gone with Richard. She'd driven herself because she knew she'd leave that party alone, and with her head held high. As she drove home, Nicole thought about the future. She knew the next few months would be difficult. There would be the divorce, there would be court hearings, there would be more confrontations with Richard. But she was ready, because she was no longer the woman who had walked into that party a few hours ago. She was stronger now, more confident, freer. Nicole also thought about what she was going to do with her life. She had put her career on hold when she married Richard, but now she could come back. She could use her skills, she could work again, she could be independent, and most importantly, she could be happy, truly happy. Not the fake happiness she pretended to have with Richard, but real happiness, the happiness of being free, of being herself. When Nicole arrived home, she stepped inside and looked around. That house had been her home for 15 years, but now it felt different. It felt smaller, less important. Because Nicole knew that a house doesn't make a home. People do, and she didn't want to share that house with Richard anymore. She went upstairs and started packing. She was leaving that house. She was going to rent an apartment. She was going to start over, alone, but free. As she was packing her clothes, Nicole heard her cell phone ring. It was a message from Daniel. He wrote, Nicole, the authorities have arrived. Richard has been taken in for questioning. The company will open a full investigation. Thank you for exposing the truth. Nicole smiled. It was just the beginning, but it was a good start. She continued packing. She grabbed her clothes, her shoes, her personal belongings. She left behind everything related to Richard, the photos, the mementos, the gifts. She didn't want any of it anymore. When she finished, Nicole looked around the room one last time. She remembered all the nights she'd cried there, all the nights she'd felt alone, even though she was married, all the nights she'd wished things were different. But now, things were different. Because Nicole had taken control of her own life. She had decided she deserved more, and she had fought for it. Nicole grabbed her bags and headed downstairs. She put everything in the car and looked at the house one last time. That house had been a part of her life, but it wasn't anymore. Now, she was going to build a new life. A life where she was the protagonist, a life where she wasn't invisible. Nicole got in the car and drove away. She didn't look in the rearview mirror. She didn't want to look back. She just wanted to look forward, to the future, to the possibilities. And as she drove through the city streets, Nicole smiled, because she knew she had done the right thing. She had faced her fear. She had faced her humiliation, and she had emerged victorious. 6 months later, Nicole sat in her new office. She was back working in financial auditing. And not only that, she had started her own firm, a firm specializing in detecting corporate fraud. Her experience with Richard had become her greatest strength. Her life was completely different now. She had a beautiful apartment, she had true friends, she had a promising career, and most importantly, she had peace. Peace of mind, peace of heart. Richard, on the other hand, was facing multiple lawsuits. He had been indicted for fraud, tax evasion, and money laundering. Stephanie was also facing charges. They had both lost everything. Their jobs, their reputations, their freedom. And Nicole had won everything. She had won her life back. Nicole's story teaches us something important. It teaches us that no one deserves to be humiliated. No one deserves to be treated as inferior. And when that happens, we have two choices. We can accept it and continue to suffer. Or we can fight. We can stand up. We can demand respect. Nicole chose to fight, and she won. If you're going through a similar situation, remember, you are stronger than you think. You deserve respect. You deserve to be happy. And you have the power to change your life. Don't accept abuse. Don't accept humiliation. Fight for your rights. Fight for your dignity. And always remember, the sweetest revenge isn't destroying the other person. It's rebuilding yourself. It's becoming the best version of yourself. It's proving that you don't need anyone to be happy. Nicole proved it, and you can too. Now tell us, what did you learn from this story? How would you apply this lesson to your life? Have you ever experienced something similar? Leave a comment. We want to hear your opinion. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story, share it with them. Sometimes, a story can change a life. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications to receive more inspiring stories like this one. We're here to bring you stories that touch your heart and make you reflect. Until next time.